Hello and welcome to Dez and Marco, the podcast that probably needs a new name. I'm Marco.
And I'm Dez.
How are you, Dez?
I'm fine, how are you?
I'm doing peachy.
Okay, so full candor here, guys. We've been recording for half an hour, but somebody forgot to click record. So this is take 2.
I didn't forget to click record, it just didn't record.
But it's okay, guys, because we've got another bottle of beer to help us.
You guys didn't miss anything. Anyway, speaking of beer, which beer did you choose?
I went local again, Marco. I've gone for what I think is the most amazing beer from this part of the world. It's inspired by my most favorite animal of Scottish mythology. I think it's the only animal in Scottish mythology. Inspired by the Loch Ness Monster, and it's called Hoppy Ness by the Loch Ness Brewery. So this is brewed locally at the mountains which supply Loch Ness. And it's amazing. So I can't wait to try it. How about you?
I decided to go German this week. And so I picked from the Paulaner Brewery the Hefe Weiss beer. So I decided to try a white beer this week.
Marco, I've just got the beer database open here. We've had quite a few beers, but this is the first German beer that we've got on the list.
That's right. And this is to thank our 2% German listeners.
Hey, thank you, German listeners. But we still need Japanese listeners. And we've had one Japanese beer and they're not listening to us.
So if you have a Japanese friend, please tell them to listen to our podcast.
Or any Asian friend, because it's the only continent we're missing.
No, we're missing South America as well.
It's one of the only 2 continents we're missing.
It's one of only 2 continents. Anyway, let's start with the news. And there was one article that I read from Bloomberg, and we'll link it in the description, about how Microsoft made the decision of getting into the video game business, so with the Xbox.
I have heard this news, so I'll just let you roll with it.
All right. The article basically describes, it's an interview with a few different people that were involved with the creation of the Xbox, and it all sparks from the launch of the announcement of the PlayStation 2 by Sony. So Sony went out and announced something like, this is going to redefine gaming, and Microsoft thought, this is a huge opportunity. We should get into this business. Also, it was starting to become more and more profitable. Thing is, Sony already had 1 generation of the PlayStation behind them, and so they had experience, and most importantly, they had first-party games. So Microsoft wanted to get in. They knew they had the experience to create basically a gaming computer or a console. What they lacked was the software, not just the games themselves, but more specifically exclusives. So they decided to go to EA first, and EA said thanks, but no thanks. And then the next company they went to is, can you guess?
Nintendo.
Damn right. And so they went to Japan in a meeting that was set up by Steve Ballmer in the year 2000, I believe. And there's this one guy, Kevin Backus, who is or was the director of third-party relations at the time at Microsoft. So they just went to Nintendo, initially with intentions to talk about cooperation, much like Nintendo had with Sony before they split up, and then Sony went on and created the PlayStation. So the original idea was to create a joint venture. And then Microsoft was like, you know what? We're confident in our abilities to create a powerful console, as powerful, if not more, as the PlayStation 2. But we need the software. So how about you know, which is your strength, the Marios and Zeldas and stuff. How about we acquire you? And this guy literally says that they just laughed their asses off. And I'm reading here, imagine an hour of somebody just laughing at you. That was kind of how that meeting went.
Jesus. I find this crazy because 2 things come to mind. Firstly, Japanese and Japanese culture is very much focused on politeness and never offending someone.
Non-confrontational.
Exactly. So the fact that they were so comfortable at laughing off this idea just goes to show how maybe insulted they were.
Yeah, exactly.
And the second thing which comes to mind, and I'm going to use a big word here, hubris. I have no idea what it means. I might be using it completely incorrectly. But you mentioned that this is at the time of the PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
And the only reason why the PlayStation exists in the first place is because Nintendo scorned Sony.
Yeah, they were a little bit arrogant.
Yeah, so there was a famous prototype with Nintendo and Sony where they created, it was called the Nintendo PlayStation, and they were leveraging Sony's know-how in the CD business to create a CD drive for the next console following the Super Nintendo. I think it was a relatively successful prototype, but Nintendo scorned Sony because they wanted to have something which was their own proprietary cartridge, not a CD-ROM. And then Sony got so annoyed, having put so much work into this, they said, well, fine, we're going to create our own product. And they released the PlayStation, which almost killed Nintendo.
Yeah, and it's one of Sony's most profitable businesses.
And this was all because they were scorned.
Yeah.
And then they did it again.
Yeah, so maybe that's why they just laughed at the idea of getting acquired by Microsoft.
Maybe.
Moving on, last week I made a mistake.
Why?
I don't know if you remember, but I said that the biggest tech news of the week was that Slack was down for a few hours. And that it was great because I kind of took it easy from work for those few hours.
We were so naive, weren't we?
We really were. I think the very next day after we recorded, there was a certain riot in a certain capital and a certain world leader got banned from Twitter, Facebook.
Oh, pretty much everywhere.
Except for Parler, the one app that is now getting banned from the App Store and the Google Store, and it's no longer being hosted by Amazon. So, yeah, that's pretty big.
I don't even know where to start with this. And I've said this in previous podcasts. We are never going to get political and we don't want to really pass any opinions on the matter. But this act in itself raises huge question marks on the future of social media.
No doubt. The biggest questions are around freedom of speech. Like, on one hand, if you're Twitter, can you just ban people from playing in your playground?
Oh, it's going to raise so many questions about, as you said, freedom of speech, access to the internet, and regulation as well, like content moderation. No, is that the right word? Moderation of content?
Hubris.
Yes. Content hubris. I'm sure that's the correct use.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. Don't want to touch the political topics, but like two huge pieces of news coming off of this. Like the first is, holy cow, they can just ban a US president from social media. And then the second is, all of this fallout is what happens to freedom of speech. Is this freedom of speech? I don't know. So, very interesting.
But guys, Slack was down.
Yeah, that was pretty big. Huh?
That's the big news.
Yeah, I took a couple of hours easy from my busy day.
Okay, so yeah, big news. Netflix made a huge announcement that they're going to release 70 new movies in 2021.
Yeah, that's right. At least one per week.
That's crazy numbers. Like, we all know they're making their own content, but a movie per week?
Yeah.
I hope it's not quantity over quality.
You know what this reminds me of? Do you know that South Park episode where Cartman becomes a robot?
Yes, Osimo.
That's right. So he's just wearing like a cardboard robot suit. And I think it's just to play a prank on Butters.
No, so this is a story in itself. So yeah, he goes to play a prank on Butters, but he has to keep up the act because Butters confesses to Cartman, who he thinks is a robot, that he has a video of him dressed up as Britney Spears playing in the back garden.
Oh, right. Yes, that he's like singing and dancing around. So anyway, he disguises as a robot and then he stays in character. And then, in typical South Park fashion, the government gets involved and they want to steal him. And everybody believes that he's a robot. But anyway, the point is that the government steals him and they put him to come up with movie ideas. And like, most of them are with Adam Sandler. And I feel like that's exactly what goes on with in the Netflix offices. And they're like, okay, we need to come up with more ideas. If you look at the movies that they announced, they've got like incredible lineups, as in, I know nothing about the movies themselves, but they've got films from Chris Hemsworth, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Zack Snyder, Leonardo DiCaprio, Ryan Reynolds. Like, these are A-list people.
I'd take that with a pinch of salt, though, because, like, there was a movie recently on Netflix with Ryan Reynolds. I can't remember, like, 6 Underground or something.
Yeah, 6, 7, something like that.
It was completely forgettable.
Much like the title.
Exactly. And remember that movie with Will Smith?
Which one?
Bright, where it's like a modern elves and orcs and humans.
Haven't seen it.
Set in like an urban LA.
Okay, no, haven't seen it.
Don't worry, you don't need to see it. My point is, it wasn't very good.
All right.
And which brings me to my next thing, because like, yes, Netflix are releasing loads of movies, potentially with A-list celebrities. But at the same time, you know, there's been this push to create their own content because like everybody's left.
Yeah, because everybody's creating their own streaming platforms nowadays.
Exactly. So like when Netflix started, people were quite happy to give them the rights to like The Office and Friends because they didn't realize how popular it would become. And then they decided they want a slice of the action.
Yeah.
And Netflix predicted this, and they decided we need to create our own content.
Yeah.
Because like now, The Office is on the Peacock or something like that?
Yeah, so NBC created Peacock. And it's basically... have you seen the pricing for it?
No.
So on their website, you can find their pricing. And there's like 3 tiers. And it's basically all centered around The Office. Tier 1 is you can watch, I don't know how many hours of content. And includes season 1 and season 2 of The Office. Tier 2 includes, I think, all the seasons. And Tier 3, it's all the seasons plus additional content. It's like, they should have just named it, click here to watch The Office.
Office Online.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, I fully agree with what you say. Like, the reason why Netflix is pushing for so much content is, one, I think they've had a pretty successful 2020, so they can afford to. And secondly, there's a huge push to create original content because everybody is creating their own streaming platform. 2020 was a huge year for Disney Plus, and now with cinemas closed, that's where you release movies as well.
Oh, on a side note, have you seen like the predictions for who's going to win like the Oscars this year? It's going to be the weirdest Oscars ever because no movies were released.
Yeah, I mean, last year in the cinema, I think I just went to see Tenet, and I want to talk about it in a future episode. Are the nominations already out?
No, there aren't any nominations yet, but they're basically all indie films.
Right, makes sense. Because those were the only films that were made.
Going back on track here, Netflix are creating their own content, and bringing on to my next sort of point of conversation here was I got recommended to watch History of Swearing, and I thought, this might be interesting. It's got Nicolas Cage, who's a guy I really like.
Recommended by whom?
By Netflix.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's usually at the top of the page.
I wasn't very impressed with it. I mean, the only saving grace was Nicolas Cage because, you know, he is the crazy personality that he is, and he delivers some crazy lines with passion about, like, certain swear words. So the focus of the series is like each episode will focus on the history of a swear word, like the F word and so on and so forth. And Nicolas Cage will just shout out those words in different contexts and talk about them briefly. But then it becomes just like a Talking Heads episode where, you know, they'll get some random experts and historians from various places who will just talk about the history of the word. And I couldn't help but think that this is like a 5-minute Wikipedia read stretched into a half-an-hour episode.
Okay.
So I wasn't that impressed with it. So I hope Netflix's content improves in quality rather than just quantity.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, if you're producing 70 movies, how many of those are going to be actually good? Or actually, has there been so far a good Netflix movie?
I don't know. Like, there's, what's it called? Roma? Which is about the Romani Gypsies, which was a Alfonso Cuarón movie, I think, which was like nominated for an Oscar and stuff.
Oh, right. I saw a meme about it. They called it Coma because it's so boring.
So the answer is no.
No, but I mean, it did well. I think it was like the classic movie made to kind of please the Academy because it was highly regarded by the Academy, and at least everybody I spoke to said it was incredibly boring, but I haven't seen it.
And as a side note, at the end of the day, we are Italians. If you're going to call a film Roma, it better be about Rome.
I'm right.
Damn right.
Okay, so History of Swearing, thumbs down.
Thumbs down.
So I won't even bother. Is it at least like I've got nothing to do and I'm on the couch for the 17th straight hour, I might as well watch it? Or like, it's worse than that?
It's a Netflix and chill movie in the sense that you can turn it on and do something else.
Okay, cool.
But, you know, Netflix aren't the only people who make not great things to watch.
Oh my god, Dez. I watched on Prime, Jaxi.
I've never even heard of that. What is it?
So Prime recommended it to me. Turns out it's not an Amazon Originals, I think they called them. But I just kind of wanted a movie to leave in the background, or I was tired of watching whatever series I was watching that day. And so it was at the top of the recommendations. So it's this movie with Adam Devine. You've seen him. He's like the goofy guy in every movie you've watched.
Ah, okay.
Have you ever watched the series Workaholics?
No.
Have you watched Modern Family?
Yes.
Okay, he's one of Hailey's boyfriends, like the really goofy, awkward one that like really looks up to Phil.
Oh, I know the guy.
Yeah,
yes,
you
yes,
definitely
yes.
know the guy. You know quite a few faces in this movie, but they're like known, but you don't really know who they are. The story centers around this guy living in San Francisco, and it's very San Francisco, like very stereotypical millennial San Francisco. So you see, like, for example, these driverless cars all over the place, and this guy is completely addicted to his phone and to his, like, he cannot live without his phone, to the point that, like, he walks down the street just looking at his phone all the time, like crashing into people. He can't drive to work without the sat nav, and that's it. And like, that's how this guy is presented, and that's how, and the character development, like at the beginning he's completely dependent on his phone, and at the end he's almost dependent on his phone. I'm gonna spoil all of it because it's terrible, and so just to save you guys time. And so he works in this like web news place that is clearly BuzzFeed, but it's not BuzzFeed. Like, his boss tells him, like, okay, now you need to come up with 40 new lists, because everybody likes lists, and make sure there's kittens, and make sure there's, like, Ryan Gosling, or something like that. And he's walking down the street, he, like, checking his phone like usual. He crashes into this girl, and his phone falls and breaks. And that's the setup. He walks into a store, phone store, which is clearly a ripoff of the Apple store, and he buys this new phone, takes it home, and the phone is all operated by this AI kind of Siri, Google Assistant kind of thing. Thing is, this is like an AI that becomes self-aware and starts pushing this guy to get out of his comfort zone. So this is a guy that like doesn't socialize because he wants to spend his evening like at home watching the equivalent of Netflix.
Boring.
Like, I think the idea in itself is actually pretty good, of like kind of depicting what we are becoming, as in super dependent on our phones and super dependent on technology and the internet and stuff like that. But it's just the execution I thought was terrible.
Dude, I'm falling asleep here, man. I'm so glad.
And that's how we're gonna end it. So I've already told you, in the end, they get the guy and the girl are together, so everybody's happy in true rom-com fashion. So you don't have to watch it. You're welcome.
Okay, so let's go to things that we actually do want to watch. So you're hyped.
Yes, our hype segment. So what's the best movie franchise ever?
Ever. Legally Blonde.
Close, but not quite. Oh my god, you like it too?
No, okay, so I'm going to have to go between Terminator, Rocky, or Rambo.
Okay, Rambo, I have to be honest, I haven't really seen the latest one. I saw like the first ones when I was a kid, and I can't really remember them, so shame on me. Terminator, I'm going to argue that, because the first two were incredible movies, and then they kind of destroyed the franchise. And but Rocky, yes. Fun fact, we ran up the Rocky steps in Philadelphia, and it was like the best.
Which are really not that long. And also, I feel sorry for the people of Philadelphia, because like you go there and that's all you will see. Tourists running up and down.
Yeah, and there's like a pretty cool museum right on top of the stairs, and literally everywhere on that street, and nobody goes in.
There's the Rocky statue outside, and then everyone does the stairs.
Yeah, and you have to queue to take a picture of the Rocky statue.
But not to go in the museum.
Yeah, which says a lot about how good the Rocky franchise is. It's one of, like, that one, I think, with a couple of exceptions, like Rocky 5 and Rocky when he's old. I can't remember what, Rocky Balboa, I think it was called. Let's face it, they're pretty bad. All the other movies are fantastic. And they continued the franchise recently with the Creed franchise.
Yes, so we like the Creed movies. And so the third one has been announced, if I'm correct.
Yes, that's right.
Can I just point out something which I'm going to ruin the movie for everyone? Because the Creed is set today, isn't it? It's not like set a few years ago. You know, it's set in present day America.
Yeah.
And Creed is the illegitimate son of Apollo Creed, which was Rocky's frenemy, to best put it. In the sense that they started off as rivals, but they grew a mutual respect for each other. And there was a famous fight against Ivan Drago in Rocky IV, which ended Apollo's life in the ring. And this fight is referenced a lot in the Creed movies. And here's my spoiler. According to the official Rocky lore, Apollo Creed died on August 31, 1985.
Okay.
According to the official Rocky lore, Adonis Creed was born on June the 1st, 1986.
I'm doing the math. That doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. He was conceived a month after, or at least more than a couple of months after he died.
And that, my friends, is the power of Apollo Creed.
But we'll give it away to artistic license. But anyway, yeah, please go on, Marco.
Creed 3 was announced, I think, a while back. What changed this week? And frankly, I don't know whether to be hyped about it or not, because despite the fact that this is our hype segment, it's going to be directed by Michael B. Jordan. So the actor that plays Adonis Creed.
Yes, not the basketball player. Completely different people.
There's a B in between. Yeah, so it's going to be directed by him. So hopefully he, let's say, cares enough about the franchise to continue it. But sad fact, Sylvester Stallone won't be returning as Rocky Balboa.
He did say this at the end of the last one. He said the whole point of the Creed movies was to pass on the baton to the next person.
And my prediction is, because I think I can't remember whether it was the Creed 2 or Creed 1 that Rocky has cancer or that he's sick. So my prediction is that in Creed 3, Rocky's dead.
Already dead or dying?
He's not on it, so I'm guessing they're going to write it in as he's dead.
I want a montage. I want an 80s style montage with Rocky in Creed.
Yeah, and I'll tell you more. Adonis Creed is going to use Rocky's death as a motivation.
Ooh, I like it.
That's my prediction. We'll see. If you're listening to this podcast when the movie is already out, let me know.
How?
Like, I don't know. They'll invent time machines in the future. Just let me know. Give me a call. I don't know. Send me a message.
And moving on to tech news, because this is technically a tech podcast, we're quite hyped about Samsung's event, which is around the corner. They've got a whole heap of new products, which will be interesting.
Wait, when is it?
It's on January the 14th. So by the time this episode airs...
Yeah, you're right. This episode will have already aired. So, Dennis, what did you think about the Samsung event the other day?
Oh, man. When they presented the... insert product name. It was fantastic.
And what about the... insert other product name?
I never saw that coming.
I couldn't have...
But you know what? The leaks about the insert other product name, that was mind-boggling.
Jokes aside, leakers have become so good that now, by the time something is announced or released, we already know everything about it.
Yeah. Personally, I'm not too excited about the new Galaxy S21 because it's going to be like an iterative improvement on the previous one. So we already spoke in the previous episodes how like the S21 range is probably going to have like an Ultra, a Pro, a Plus, etc. And the pen is moving away from the Note and going to the S series. Yeah. Fine. They're releasing a new Exynos chip to be on par with the Snapdragon chip. I don't believe that because if it was, why would they still be using Snapdragon? But okay.
That's something that I've always wondered. I think they have certain agreements with Qualcomm that they have to use Snapdragon chips in certain markets because otherwise it makes no sense. But Samsung has announced a new Exynos chip that will power the S21 range, and allegedly it's on par with whatever Snapdragon has to offer this year. So major push. And one thing that Samsung has announced is that they intend to sell it to third parties.
That will be interesting because depending how they price it, I mean, the Exynos chips aren't bad. It's just that the Snapdragons were always that little bit better. But then if they price it well, it could be a very viable alternative.
Yeah, and it could be huge for Samsung because right now, anything apart from Apple and a few Kirin phones, which are mostly Huawei's, which, you know, the international bans aren't really helping their sales. But everything Android just uses Snapdragon. I think it's good for the market to have choices.
It's good for the consumer because competition is good.
Yeah.
And but me personally, Samsung are releasing a new product to compete with the Apple AirPods Pro, and that's the Galaxy Buds Pro.
Also vastly leaked on the internet.
Oh yeah, vastly leaked. And in fact, I think on YouTube there is already an unboxing.
Oh really?
And someone has already looked at the Galaxy Wear app, where there is already code for like the features which will be in the Galaxy Buds Pro.
Okay.
So like there's literally nothing that we don't know about it except for like the quality of the noise cancellation and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, because everything else we know. Also for the phone, we know what they look like. We know which colors they're coming out in. We know even pricing, basically.
Yeah, essentially we do know the pricing because even that's been leaked in various markets. Like I think a Canadian retailer has already leaked the page online, so we know roughly how much it's going to cost.
Yeah, and they're going to be cheaper than AirPods Pro, allegedly.
And importantly, Samsung products tend to drop in price in sales and stuff, whereas Apple products notoriously don't.
Yeah, which is great, because I'm actually looking to buy some wireless earphones for my Note. So my intention was to get the Galaxy Buds Live, but then you told me that they were going to announce new headphones, so maybe the Buds Live drop in price, or maybe the Buds Pro will be that much better that convince me to buy those instead.
Oh, I have to admit that Samsung's marketing team really needs to work on the naming of their products. Because they had like the Galaxy Buds, makes sense. The Galaxy Buds Plus, okay. Then the Galaxy Buds Live, whatever. And then the Galaxy Buds Pro. And you're like, what?
Yeah, and the Buds Live are like the whole tech world basically just decided, just call them beans. Because they're shaped
but they look like beans. To be honest with you, I like the philosophy in the design philosophy. They look like jewels in your ear.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they work well. So I've got no problems with that. I do like them as products, but I don't know. The naming is just confusing.
Yeah, but then also with the S20, they did the S20, the S20 Plus, the S20 Ultra. But that's
the S20 Fan Edition.
It's also part of Samsung's go-to-market strategy is to just flood the market with as many different variations of a phone that they can imagine.
Speaking of which, the Fan Edition was actually really good. Like, I wish I waited for it to come out.
Really? Would you have gotten that one instead of the OnePlus you got?
Yeah, because it's got, like, all the best features and, like, a flat screen.
Yeah, which is actually so good.
Which is so much better. Like, it's still got, Samsung's amazing screen, has a high refresh rate, has all the perks, like wireless charging.
High-end processor,
good battery life, good cameras. But the only thing they've cut on is the curved screen and like the not build quality, but build materials. Like they've gone for a plastic back.
Yeah, which honestly,
doesn't bother me.
Cares?
It's it's going to be in a case. So perfect. So it was a really interesting product for something which costs several $100 or pounds or euros cheaper than the equivalent with a glass back.
Yeah, it was very compelling. And it got recognized as one of the best phones of 2020. So I hope it sells, because then that will kind of push the market towards a cheaper phone. And you kind of see that trend lately, because also the iPhone 11 and 12, like not the Pro ones, they dropped in price. So they went from, the $1,000 euro mark towards more like 700-800.
Yeah.
I think it's great. And also, even Samsung, with if you don't count the Ultra models, they're all dropped in price. And the leaks from the S21 range say that it's going to be cheaper than an S20 at launch.
I'm very happy with that news, because let's be honest, times are tough out there at the moment, and I don't think there is appetite for ever increasing starting prices for these phones.
And also, there's no need. That's the thing.
Yeah,
I'm still rocking an iPhone XS, and it works perfectly. The only thing that maybe isn't holding up as well as when I first bought it is the battery. But I'm literally always home. I can charge it anytime.
Which you can replace, though. We should be encouraged in terms of sustainability. Replacing a battery and having a phone which performs without any performance issues, it's the sensible thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. And also, if we want to look at it from a different aspect, how is an iPhone 12 different than an iPhone 10? As in, what can it do more besides better pictures, faster, and everything? There's no revolutions in I think the next big thing will be foldable.
Oh, talking of which, I'll be a little bit more hyped about it next week. But did you see LG release they are going to release the rollable phone?
Really?
I say rollable. It starts off as the size of a normal smartphone, and you pull it out, you unroll it,
really,
and it becomes like a mini tablet.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
So imagine opening up a scroll. I think that's the best way of describing it. But I'll talk about it more next week.
Okay, Next up in our hype segment, which is actually pretty huge this week. Have you seen that Nintendo, I still hungover from the Super Mario 35 year celebrations. They are going to release Super Mario 3D World on the Switch. So it's a re-release of a Wii U game.
Oh, which nobody played. That's why they're re-releasing it.
Nobody played on the Wii U because nobody had one in the first place. But they've made it better and they've added Bowser's Fury to it. And they just released a little trailer, and it shows Bowser that's ginormous, and then you as Mario, there's like a huge bell, I think, that you can ring, and then you can become also huge, and so it seems pretty cool. Yeah, and with it, they're going to release a new colorway of the Switch, which is like red and blue to celebrate Mario, which looks awesome.
I'm looking at pictures of it now, and they're pretty sweet.
Yes. The only thing is, the Joy-Cons are going to be garbage, much like all of the other ones.
I think we need to remind people that Marco has a hatred for the Joy-Cons.
They are the worst. They are so uncomfortable, and they never work. And like we've mentioned, I've been playing a ton of Hades recently on the Switch, and it's a game that you need good controls for. You need precisions, and every 3 times I play, they just start going in whatever direction they want and buttons stop working. And I really hate it. But I'm not going to give them any more money to buy new ones. Anyway, moving on. So Disney announced a new era for gaming. And as they rebranded their, let's say, gaming division to Lucasfilm's game.
Okay, interesting.
Yes, earlier this week. And then following that announcement, we got 2 more announcements, which could potentially be very, very interesting. So the first one is Bethesda, so the game developer that does the Fallout series as well as the, what's it called, the Elder Scrolls?
Yeah, so like Skyrim and stuff.
As well as they own the ID, like id games, so Wolfenstein, yes. Doom. So they announced with a teaser trailer that they're developing an Indiana Jones game.
Okay.
So that has the potential to be like an absolutely terrible game. But if all they do is make an Uncharted game with Indiana Jones, I'm in.
I don't even know where to start. So yes, Indiana Jones has huge potential to make a successful franchise in gaming. But I'm just very confused at what's happening because I'm thinking back at the original Indiana Jones games. And I think they were made by LucasArts.
Yeah, they were like a point-and-click adventure, and they were awesome.
They were really good, which leads me to my next thing. So we have, LucasArts, which is obviously made by George Lucas of Star Wars, and Star Wars has famously been bought out by Disney.
Yeah.
But Bethesda belonged to Microsoft.
Yeah.
And they're releasing an Indiana Jones game, which maybe is not LucasArts intellectual property, fair enough.
No, it is a LucasArts IP, yeah.
But then Ubisoft have announced a Star Wars game as well. So LucasArts IP being made by Microsoft and not by Disney, which has been rebranded to Lucasfilm Game.
Yeah, right now, all Lucasfilm's games are, or up until now, they were attached to EA. So EA, I guess, had an exclusive. By rebranding, what Disney is saying is we can work with whatever developer we want.
Ah, okay.
Following that announcement, Bethesda announced the Indiana Jones game, which, again, could be great, we don't know anything about it, like release date or what it looks like or how it's going to play, but could be a ton of fun. Again, if all they do is copy Uncharted, I'm super happy. And then secondly, Ubisoft announced an open world Star Wars game. Again, could be great. I haven't played them, but I do remember that the Knights of the Old Republic reviewed very, very well by BioWare. So the ones that then went on to create Mass Effect.
Yeah, I think everyone reminisces about those games as the good Star Wars games until they went microtransaction crazy.
Yeah, although I have to say that the Star Wars Squadrons, the one where you just pilot an X-Wing or a TIE fighter, which came out last year recently, it reviewed very well. And it's very, like, there's a good single-player campaign as well as
Is that not the one where they, you bought like a game which cost like 60 euros, pounds, whatever, and then made you buy loot boxes?
No. That one was, I think, Battlefront.
Battlefront. Okay, fine.
I think it was Star Wars Battlefront. That was like a huge controversy because basically they found out that you couldn't win without paying for the loot boxes. And EA got a ton of criticism for that. But again, that's what EA does. But there's one thing that I'm really, really hoping, and I know that you are as well, because I know what games you like, because Lucasfilm game is now a thing. My dream is that they kind of resurrect a really old franchise that I'm really fond of, which is Monkey Island.
Anything Monkey Island, I love. But let's be honest. Monkey Island 1 and 2, they're masterpieces. However, Monkey Island 3 and 4 were not masterpieces.
I played 3. It was good, but not at that level. But 4, I couldn't finish.
It was at that awkward moment with 3D graphics had kind of just started, but the user interface hadn't quite developed. Whereas Monkey Island was perfect pixel art. It was perfect.
But also the remastered versions, they're very, very good because they have voice acting and...
Yeah, so hopefully they, as you said, what was the word? They revive it as opposed to make another sequel.
Yeah, I'm curious to see, but let's see. But in this episode, we not only have a hype segment, but we also have a type segment, don't we?
Yes, so I'm going to talk about this very briefly, guys, because... as you may know, both Marco and I are currently obsessed with Hades, and we're playing it a lot. And a huge emphasis of Hades is obviously on Greek mythology, because you're getting favors from the gods, it's set in the underworld, and you meet all the characters from the underworld, such as, Hades, and you are Zagreus, the son of Hades. And it's just completely revived my interest in Greek mythology. And I had some money lying in my Google account, and I've bought a couple of books. And they're really good. And anybody who lives in the UK probably knows Stephen Fry, who is a famous author / educated comedian person.
I'm sorry. Do you think his LinkedIn profile shows educated comedian person? Let's check it out.
Yeah, he's an Oxford scholar, I think. So he's big into his Greek mythology and Roman mythology. And in his own words... he has written a series of 3 books. The first one, which I'm currently reading, is called Mythos. It's the Greek myths retold. So it's a very good introduction into the Greek gods, which is told in a modern way. And it goes from the origins of the Greek gods and how they came to be, and then goes on to tell their stories. So it's a really good read, probably a good listen to, because he narrates it for Audible and the audiobook in general. So I'm currently can't get enough of Greek mythology. It's something I thought I should review, and I think it's a very good starting point to get to know Greek gods and Greek mythology without it being sort of too schooly.
That sounds interesting.
It's still the stories of Greek mythology.
Which are fun, let's say. Let's.
They are fun. The stories are interesting. So the first one talks about their origins, and it's called Mythos. And then he's got 2 sequels as part of a trilogy, and the second one's called Heroes. And it's the myths of ancient Greek heroes retold. And then the third one is Troy. And it's basically about the whole Odyssey and Trojan Wars.
Oh, those are interesting.
Yeah, they're all interesting. So, yeah. So that was my type for the week. And I'm super psyched about it. And it's really pretty good. I like it. So if you're into Greek mythology or want to gain some knowledge of it without it being too overbearing, it's a pretty good read. And they're very cheap books, actually. Like the first 2 are like less than a $5.
Oh, okay. Then I'll look them up.
Okay, guys, this has been a really long episode, so I think we should cut it now.
Yeah, time to wrap it up. How's your Loch Ness beer, Des?
You know what? It's really good. It's the kind of beer I really like. It's an IPA, but it's quite a strong IPA. It's 5%. It's got a beautiful color. It's very bright and very sort of golden color. And it's got like pine and citrus aromas. But I think the key thing about it is got like a very strong hoppy undertone, hence the name Hoppiness. And obviously the Highland water, I think, really makes it like a crisp beer to drink. It's really good. I would probably give it a solid 4 out of a full 6-pack.
Wow, must be good compared to your standards.
Yes, I'm not the most generous.
Des is a very harsh reviewer.
How was yours?
My Paulaner Weissbier is very good. So it's the Weissbier, but reminds me of when we went to Oktoberfest, which was a really, really fun day and a really, really bad hangover the next day. It's got a smooth taste. It's not too heavy. It's a perfect session beer. I could see myself drinking many of these. So let's say 3 out of 6.
So yeah, that sounds good.
And on that note, I think we should wrap it up. And Des, I'm going to talk to you next week. And guys, thank you for listening.
Thank you guys. See you next time.